I'm Walt Bauer, and I'd like to welcome you to the Human Development Institute's second fall seminar. We will be hosting an additional fall seminar on Friday, October 30th, and we hope you will join us for that one. Information about our seminars are available on our website. We have multiple sites around the state joining us this afternoon. As all the sites have previously tested connections, we don't expect any issues, but should you need assistance, please utilize the technical support at your site. Also, please be sure that your microphones are muted when the presenter is speaking. Our presenter will provide an opportunity for questions this afternoon, and we welcome questions from all our sites. We're using different systems at the different host sites, so some sites may see a Polycom on their screen for just a moment. Should you have any questions about continuing education credit, you can contact me. I also want to remind everyone that you need to sign in at your location, and please take a moment at the conclusion of the seminar to complete our brief evaluation. It is really helpful as we plan for upcoming seminars. Now, to introduce today's speaker, we have Jonathan Martinez. He is a legal director for the Quality Trust for Individuals with Disabilities and the project director for the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making. Jonathan Martinez has over 20 years' experience representing people with disabilities in cases under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, the Social Security Act, and other civil rights laws. In 2013, he represented Margaret Jenny Hatch in the Justice for Jenny case, which held that Ms. Hatch has a right to use supported decision-making instead of being subjected to a permanent plenary guardianship. And now, our presenter, Jonathan Martinez.
Hi. I was not waiting for applause. That can come later. So honored to be here. My name is Jonathan. Hello to everyone in the remote sites. I am wanting a walker and a pacer. If I go out of screen, I'm sorry, but there's a good chance you're better off not getting much of my face. So, my honor to be here to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, supported decision making. At the outset, let's have a couple of ground rules. The first is, this is an interactive presentation. There is perhaps, with the possible exception of my mother, no one in the world who likes the sound of my voice more than me. However, if you might be interested in hearing something other than my voice, ask questions whenever they hit you. We're going to learn better when we learn better together, when we're interactive. Something is important to you, something I say strikes a nerve, so talk about it. Let's all talk about it, okay? Because the topic today, supported decision-making, is new. Well, that means that all of us here, as professionals in the realm of people with disabilities and working with and serving and working collaboratively with people with disabilities, we all have the same attitude, we all believe the same things, we'll all leave here today in lockstep on this issue, correct? Of course not. Of course not. If you bought that last sentence, I do have a bridge for sale. This is a new issue. It's a new way of dealing with things. And new means we haven't worked out all the kinks yet. There's gonna be things today where you're gonna say, that doesn't sound right, or that might not work right for the person I'm working with. And when that happens, we need your questions, we need your comments as we develop this to make sure it is in the best place to help the most people. So, one ground rule, questions, questions, questions. And to start with, I have one for you. Up on the screen?
Start the time.
No. You're working on it, guys. What is your favorite right? What is it about your rights, about your legal opportunities that makes you the proudest to be an American, to be a human? What are the things that are really important to you?
The right to vote.
The right to vote. Others. The right to choose. What else? You stole my thunder. Free speech. Community integration. Supported employment. Coffee after lunch.
Assemble.
You assemble. What do all of these rights have in common? Choice, right? Choice. the right to free speech, the right to choose what to say, community integration, the right to choose where to live, the right to choose to do what you want, when you want, with your body, the right to vote, the right to choose your elected folk. Right? Choices are the most important things we have. They define us. They say who we are, what we can be, what we want to be, what we don't want to be. Jean-Paul Sartre, not the sunshiniest of writers, said, I am my choices. I cannot not choose. My choices make up who I am. We are all in this room because of the choices that we made. And that's a core issue you're going to hear about time to time for the next 2 hours. Our choices, good, bad, and different, yes, including our mistakes, make up who we are. Clinically, we call that self-determination. And we have known for decades, for 40 years, studies have been done on self-determination. They call it things like life control. The ability to be a causal agent in your life, doing things rather than having things done to you, causing things to happen rather than things happening to you. And we've known for 40 years that people, specifically people with disabilities, who have more self-determination, have better lives. This is not Jonathan saying this. This is people with way more initials after their name than Jonathan, who have found that when you have more self-determination, people with disabilities have more choices in their life, more control over their lives. They are objectively and subjectively healthier, meaning they live longer lives and they feel better about the lives they live. They are more independent, more well-adjusted, better employed at higher wages. We've known this for 40 years. So another stupid question for you. All those rights we talked about a second ago that are so important to you, are they worth anything? Those rights, are they worth anything? Do they mean anything if you're not allowed to exercise them? If there is someone saying to you, yes, I understand you have the right to vote, but you ain't voting. You have the right to live in the community, but you're going to live where I tell you to, and I choose a group home. Do you have rights? Are you even
Can we have one of the host sites make sure your microphone's on mute? If it's red up front, that means it's on mute. So make sure it's on mute if you're at the host sites, please. Thank you. There you go.
Good. I hate competition. So if we know these things, you know they aren't rights if you can't exercise them. Why for 2,000 years have we been doing just that to people with disabilities and older adults? Because for 2,000 years, going back to the Roman Empire, when people have shown any limitation in their ability to make decisions or function in society, what we have done is taken their rights away. In ancient Rome, they would take the feeble-minded, their words, and put them under curators. In the Middle Ages in Britain, if you were a lunatic or an idiot, again, their words, and apparently there was a difference, you would be put under committees, your rights taken away and given to somebody else. Here in America, we have followed that with guardianship. And guardianship is a state law process, every state has one, where this happens. Your rights are given to you. That is how guardianship works. A judge decides that you cannot exercise your rights and takes them away. And in the vast majority of instances, all of your rights, because the studies have shown up to 90% of guardianships are full or plenary, meaning every single right has been taken away. The right to choose, the right to vote, the right to speak, the right to work, the right to live, all in the hands of someone else. Why? We've known for 40 years, those same studies I talked to you about, when people are denied self-determination, when you limit a person's choices, they feel helpless, hopeless, and self-critical. It's back to They feel they have low self-esteem. Their ability to function is limited. So think about all the reasons you've ever heard in support of guardianship, protection, we're going to help you live better, and realize that according to just about every study ever done on the subject, through your no doubt well-meaning move or a person's well-meaning, we're actually taking away abilities, limiting potential. And that's a problem, isn't it? And it's a problem Congress has known about for almost 30 years. On your screen, statement of Congressman Pepper, who was the chair of the Subcommittee on Aging, who said this about guardianship in 1987, mind you, that the typical ward has fewer rights than the typical convicted felon. A guardian chooses where you live, how you live, and sometimes how you die. And he said it is the most severe penalty that can be put on a person short of the death penalty. And research has borne that out. Because we've seen that when people are under guardianship, particularly undue or overbroad guardianship, as I call it, guardianships on someone who does not need to be in a guardianship, or does not need as many rights taken away, they have less life outcomes, significant negative impact on physical and mental health, on their ability to function in reports of subjective well-being, meaning less healthy, live less long, have less good lives. So for 2,000 years, why have we done what we have done? On the other hand, like I told you, the studies say that when you have more self-determination, people have better views of their own life, of their own health. They are better able to adjust to increasing care needs. Think about how important that is for people who have progressive disabilities, or who have dementia as it continues. They have better quality of life, more independence, more community integration, more employment, with more life control. Again, not Jonathan talking. 40 years of studies. And here's my favorite one, right here. Because the number one reason we ever hear for guardianship is protection. Got to keep people safe, right? You might meet someone you shouldn't meet, do something you shouldn't do. Well, here's a study that was done in Long Island University by Professor Kempka. Women with intellectual disabilities given more self-determination were better able to recognize potentially abusive situations and better able to avoid abuse. So as I have told the judge on more than one occasion, you want to protect someone? Don't take away their rights. Empower them. Give them opportunities to exercise the rights that they have. You will make people safer and healthier. And thank God for the National Core Indicators, and I know to whom I am speaking. Because the National Core Indicators, for those of you who are unfamiliar with them, is a study done by states where they collect data regarding people with disabilities on a number of different areas, essentially around quality of life. And what kind of life do you have based upon certain variables? One of the variables they checked out was whether a person had a guardian or not. And it was collected in what I call an apples-to-apples method. People of similar abilities and similar limitations. And one way we split up that data was whether these people with similar abilities and similar limitations had guardians or not. And what kind of lives they lived. Well, across the board and across the country and here in Kentucky, with the only difference being whether or not this person had a guardian. Those without guardians were more likely to have a paid job, live independently, have friends other than staff or family, go on dates and socialize in the community, and practice the religion of their choice. Anybody here big fans of the Olmsted decision? Community integration? What is more community integration than this? What does it mean to live in your community more than to be able to work and live and date and socialize and practice the religion of your choice? And if the only thing keeping you from being more likely to be that integrated is whether or not you have a guardian, why do we have so many people in guardianship? I think this is why. We meant well. Guardianship for 2,000 years has been seen as a kindness. It protects people, right? It's always been the view. If you don't have a guardianship, you might get into trouble. So I'm going to put my child under guardianship so I can help keep my child safe. Well, I'm a fan of Olmsted too, not just the big one, but this one from 1928, where the Supreme Court basically said, that's when you get scared. When someone says to you, relax, it's for your own good, that's when you get out of Dodge. Because there are no greater threats to liberty than when we are well-meaning. Than people with limits in understanding but lots of good intentions do things to or for people. That's when we mean the most well, and that's when we are the most dangerous. Let me give you a quick example. I want you all in this room to think about, and out there, to think about 1995. I want you to think about where you were, what you were doing, what life was like in 1995. I look around, I know there were some people who were still probably in high school, and to you, from the bottom of my heart, I hate you. Everyone else, think about 1995. Think about what services and supports were out there in 1995, what life was like for people with disabilities in 1995. The ADA was only 5 years old. It was 4 years before the Olmsted decision. It was still perfectly okay to warehouse people in institutions. Sheltered workshops, were a perfectly acceptable employment outcome. It was fine to tell people with disabilities, whatever your abilities are, it's okay for you to go make wallets for 10 cents a piece. We didn't have technology like we have today. We didn't have Medicaid waivers like we have today. 20 years later, think about where we are. Community integration is a right. Supported employment is the rule. People with disabilities have more options. We have more technology. We have an iPad that can replace a $10,000 Dynavox communication device. We have more supports and services to make more people more independent in more ways than ever before. Agreed? But answer this question. Why have the number of people under guardianship tripled since 1995? It's 1 million more people under guardianship in just these last 20 years. It's a lost generation. We have said to 1 million people, you don't need those rights, or you can't use those rights. And as the studies have shown, we have doomed 1 million people to a less full, less independent, less integrated life. Why? And again, I tell you, I think the answer is we meant well. Think about every time you've talked to somebody who's thinking about a guardianship. They need protection. They might sign something they shouldn't sign. They might do something they shouldn't do. They might meet someone they shouldn't meet. Right? That's the reason, right? Well, everyone, I want to see a show of hands. Who here has closed on a mortgage or signed a lease? Okay. So when you close on a mortgage, you go to this big closing ceremony, right? You get your real estate agent, got the lawyer there. They give you a stack of papers this high. You're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars and 30 years of your life in the hands of a bank. Yes? And then your realtor says, this stack of papers, sign them. Did you read them? There's always a lawyer or someone in the room who says they read them. And to you, I say, well done. You're better than me because I did not. And everyone else who did not, to you I say, bad decision. Where's your guardian? Who here has consented to a medical procedure like surgery? Put your hands in your life in the hands of a stranger, right? Doctors, nurses, anesthesiologists you've never met before. They take you around to them. They're all saying words at you really fast, and all of them want you to sign a piece of paper saying you got informed consent to do this. Did you read them? This is a good room, man. Because I know a lot of people who didn't. To them, I say, it's a bad decision. I ask this room, who here has bought a pasta maker at 2 in the morning? Who here has dropped some bucks on some fitness equipment from an infomercial? Who here has logged way too much time on late night TV? All these are bad decisions. Where's our guardians? Okay, next questions for you. Who here has made a bad decision and learned from it? Who's dated the wrong person and found out what a good relationship is? Who's bought a bad car and said, I ain't never buying that brand again? Look what you did. You learned. You made mistakes. And you got better because of it. Think about that for a second. Your mistake, your bad decisions, your risky decisions made you stronger, smarter, better people, correct? Unless you're a person with a disability. Because people with disabilities are held uniformly to the Mr. Spock standard. unless you make every decision perfectly, logically, and appropriately, we assume you can't make any decisions and we take away your rights. Why do we do that? So where do we go? I'm not here to tell you that guardianship's never needed. Not. Guardianship may be needed. There are certainly times when it's appropriate. People may be have such a severe or progressing disability. People may not have an interest in making decisions. Each person is an individual, so there are certainly times when guardianship is appropriate. I am here to tell you that guardianship is never needed just because you have X disability, or you are Y years old, or because you're sick or need help, or God help us, for your own good. These are never reasons to impose a guardianship on a person. So really, where do we go from here? I'm hoping I have made my case that people who have more control over their lives have better lives. And I think we can all assume that there are people in this world who need help, i.e. all of us. And some people need more help as they get older, or some people need more help because they have disabilities. And I'm hoping I have convinced you that taking away rights is bad for people in a number of areas. So if we know that when you have more control over your life, you have a better life. When you have less control over your life, you have a worse life. And if we know that people need help across the lifespan, what we need to do is come up with a way to keep people in control of their lives, while also giving them the supports they need to exercise that control. So let me talk to you about a friend of mine. On your screen right now is Jenny Hatch. I met Jenny when she was 29 years old. She's 30. She's going to turn 32 actually in November. I need to update it. In March, I need to update the slide. Jenny graduated from high school. So she was the president of her class. Worked for 5 years. Had her own apartment. Worked in a quote-unquote regular job, making regular wages, paying regular taxes. Jenny had an auto accident. And for reasons we don't need to get into here, her parents moved to become her guardians. When I met Jenny, the court had already put her in a quote-unquote temporary guardianship. Now remember, had her own job, lived and worked independently. When I met Jenny, she was in this temporary guardianship. She had been forced to live in a segregated group home because the guardian said that's where she needed to live. She had to quit her job. The guardian said she couldn't work there. She was working in a sheltered workshop where she said, in her words, I snapped snaps together. It was boring. 8 hours a day, roughly 5 days a week, for 8 months, and made a total of $1,000. If you wanted to see Jenny, you had to fill out a permission slip. You had to tell the guardians what you were going to talk to her about and ask permission to do that. And you had to agree, in writing, not to discuss her guardianship with her, not to discuss her pending guardianship with her, or else they could say, you can't see her. In fact, the first time I met Jenny, I had to break an entry. Pro tip for y'all who are going to do some advocacy, a clipboard and a confident wave gets you in anywhere. Walked in, here to see Jenny, and I asked her, do you want some help? And she said yes. And the first time I had to go to court in Jenny's case was because I asked the guardian's attorney, I'm her attorney, I don't need to get your permission to talk to Jenny about the guardianship case, do I? Oh, yes you do. Well, it says on this form I can't talk to her about the guardianship case. That can't possibly apply to me. Oh, yes it does. So the first time I went to court in Jenny's case, it was to say to the judge, they want me not to talk to my client about my client's case. How can this be? As we reviewed the case, Jenny's court order, I always say this, Jenny's rights in a nutshell. The temporary guardianship order was like 10 pages long. There were 4 different paragraphs in that order saying that the guardians had the right to say where she lived. There were 3 different paragraphs saying they had the right to control all of her medical care, including whether she received medical care. There were no paragraphs saying that they had an obligation to ensure appropriate rehabilitative care or appropriate rehabilitative technology, but there was a whole paragraph on their right to say she didn't need CPR, or to withdraw medication, or to forcibly assert medication. And then the last paragraph is this one. I always call it Jenny's rights in a box. As it says, the guardians have the right to decide everything. Look at those words. Are there any rights left for Jenny Hatch under this? They have the right to control who visits her, what kind of health care she gets, her safety, habilitation, education, therapeutic treatments, and residence.